Hello, thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings Podcast. I'm your host, Paul. Today is Sunday, August 24th, 2025, and this is episode 61. Let's see. I want to thank all the listeners. You can reach us at Recovery Recordings. This is our email, recoveryrecordings615@yahoo.com. You can also find us. We have a private Facebook page, and that is Recovery Recordings Recovery Recordings Podcast. I'm sorry. Hold on a second. I'm all tongue twisted. I'm sorry. We have a private Facebook page, and it is 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings Podcast. And you can get on there and send us a request, and we'd love to add you to the page. You can find us on Audible, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podomatic, several other platforms. Let's see, this week we have a lot of cool stuff coming up. This week we have Jane W. from Nashville, Tennessee. She is coming up on, August 27th. I think it's this upcoming Wednesday. Yeah, this Wednesday, August 27th. We're going to do an episode on inventory. We're calling it A Business Which Takes No Regular Inventory Usually Goes Broke. And we also have, on September 1st, Renee E. from Lebanon, Tennessee was supposed to be on last week, and we're going to do an episode on steps 10 and 11. We're calling it Carrying the Vision of God's Will in All Our Activities. But we had to move her episode to this upcoming a week from tomorrow, which is September 1st. Super excited about that. And then a lot of other cool stuff coming up for later or the beginning of September. Super excited about tonight's guest. We have Juanita coming all the way from Santa Fe, New Mexico. How you doing, Juanita?
I'm doing pretty good, Paul. How about you?
I'm doing good. How's everything been going?
It's been going.
Yeah, busy. Yeah.
It's been busy. A lot of stuff. Life happening, right?
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say I'm busy. I'm always busy, but it's usually a pretty good busy, right? Having purpose, right?
Yeah. Having purpose. That's the truth. Absolutely.
Thank God.
Yeah.
That's a common thread. Like whenever I'll meet, somebody that's just coming into the program, like I'll start seeing how, man, that's there's no purpose. It's been missing this whole time. You know?
Yeah. Boy, it's so true. It's like when I first got here. I mean, I was, a mom, I was a wife, I worked and all this stuff, but it just seemed like I was just surviving. And I couldn't even appreciate the fact that these roles had purpose, had meaning, had value, and that I couldn't see the importance of it just because I felt life had just drugged me down,
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. Yeah. I'll tell you, I was sitting there thinking about our episode the last time we met up, which was one thing that really stood out to me was, there's a couple things. There's a theme that's been going for me during the whole series so far, which is how important it is to have the recovery portion of in your life, right? The recovery. Mm-hmm. And then last week, what I walked away from was how important it is to have that 7th step awareness, right? Like if you don't have some kind of 7th step awareness of what's, selfish, self-centeredness, it's almost impossible to even begin to even want to apply some of the stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There has if I didn't realize just how powerless I was in every area of my life, I mean, it's when I first came in, I thought, yeah, not every area of my life.
Yeah, yeah,
And then it's like last week I turned in my taxes, right? I'd gotten an extension, turned in my taxes,
yeah,
and I got to tell you, I had to pray just to get to get myself motivated. And it wasn't a big deal this year as it had been in previous years,
yeah.
but still I had to pray just to like get myself to motivated and to do it.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
yeah, powerlessness.
yeah,
That's like my life is filled with it.
yeah. Well, the cool part about the recovery part, just recovery in general, is that those are like, if you're really doing the deal, it's situations like that motivate us to get closer to Him, right?
Absolutely, always.
That's the beauty of
You know it.
recovery. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
yep, it's true. Well, we just realized. I realized that my life is better with God, and I just I'm a better person with God, and I just want that relationship with God, and I want a deeper relationship with God.
yeah,
And I didn't know that I really was going to want that in my life.
yeah. Same here. Yeah,
Yeah, when I got in, let's just get through the day. Let's just,
yeah,
get him to stop drinking. And there's nothing wrong with me here. So,
yeah,
whatever you do with him, God, go for it.
yeah. I get it, man. Wow. Well, great. We got, for the listeners, we're going to attempt to cover a lot of ground tonight. And we're calling this applying the 12 traditions in our family life. Juanita is a longtime member of Al-Anon, and she is, we're calling this applying the 12 traditions in our family life. And this is our fourth episode so far. On the first one, we did traditions 1 and 2. The second episode, we did 3 and 4 last week, I think it was last week. We did 5 and 6. And then tonight we're going to attempt to cover 7 through 10, and we'll see how it goes. So
Yep.
we got a lot of ground to cover. And,
All right.
yeah, you mean to start off with the AA?
Please.
All right, so short form of the AA 12 traditions. We're in tradition 7 is every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions.
Thank you. Al-Anon reads, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. So it's basically the same, and in applying it to the family life, I got to tell you that when Tom and I got together, I wanted him to make me happy. I wanted him to make me okay. And I just, finances, I've always worked. I've always managed that. That's not a problem. I had my own bills. I had my own checking account. I did all that. What really one of the big things in my relationship with Tom was that I had to quit taking on his financial responsibility because, with his drinking and using, it was easy for me to step in, and, it was easy for him to let me. Who doesn't want to be rescued, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I wanted. I wanted him to be my knight in shining armor and rescue me. Yeah. And clearly that wasn't the case. He wasn't capable of doing any rescuing, much less he wasn't even barely capable of he had a job, and I say that him having a job, my picker was better because my first husband was not, he struggled to work, let's put it that way. And so I felt like I was making some progress, Tom worked, and he worked steadily, and he was a hard worker. But I had to quit rescuing him. I had to quit putting money to help him because I wasn't doing him any favors, and I wasn't doing myself any favors. I was so busy trying to make us look like we were okay to the outside world that my kids and he looked good. Me, I was a mess, but I couldn't see me. Because I was so focused and hyper-focused, really hyper-vigilantly focused on him, and that people thought he was doing all right so that we would look okay. And it was just crazy. I was crazy, and I had no idea. And, for me, the seventh tradition has a lot to do with equality. You know, when I set him to be my rescuer, that doesn't have us be a partnership. That's not equal, you know, or for me to consistently step in and rescue him. You know, somebody's higher up on one or two rungs of the ladder than the other one.
Mm.
And you know, because I'll speak for myself. I don't want to use the we word. I wanted to be the one who was in charge. I wanted to be the one who got my way. And that has nothing to do with equality. That has nothing to do with being self-supporting emotionally, you know, for myself or for him, you know. I was trying to take care of his emotions as well. You know, I think we've talked about that previously with other traditions, because and sometimes it's like, as we go through these traditions, we see how they dovetail each other, or one rests right on top or underneath the other one, because they're all meant to do one thing. And that one thing is to grant us unity. Grant us unity. You know, so for me to allow someone to be self-supporting emotionally, that's as well as financially, that's huge. And I think we talked about it, if not last week, one of the weeks before, about how I would often step in and help not only Tom, but help my kids. And basically what I was saying to my kids was, you can't do it, so you need me to do it for you. You know, and I sure didn't think that I was saying that or doing that. But if I'm constantly stepping in and doing for somebody and rescuing them financially, that's exactly what I'm saying. You know, you can't do it. I need to do it for you. Basically, I used money to manage. I used emotions to manage, to manipulate it, and to control others. You know, it was very, very sad. Let's see. It's so funny, Paul. We were talking about this before we started, and I was positive we had done 7 and 8. I've done a couple of meetings this week for my home group where we addressed those traditions, and so I was positive that we'd done those already. The thing with tradition 7 too is that sometimes I need to ask for help. You know, I can't just do things by myself. I need to say, I can't do this and I can help. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Let's see.
I mean, in ways, even though it seems backwards, in a ways, that's self-supporting. Like when you're asking for help, even, you know, it seems like that's not self-supporting, but it is. Like if you know you need help, you know, I mean, does that make sense? Like, you know,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, it used to be, I mean, our kids are all grown now and stuff and have, you know, even grown kids of their own. But we used to always, when we go out to eat, we'd always treat them, you know. And then I remember when we'd go out to dinner and they would pay, and it was like, oh my God, our kids are paying for us. It made I don't know about Tom, but it made me feel really old, you know. It's like, oh my God. You know, it's like any minute they're going to say, Mom, you got to go into the home now, you know. That's what it felt. But what a great thing that my children actually are capable of treating us and enjoy treating us if we go out to dinner or some other event, you know. I had to learn to let go and to let them know that I appreciate their doing this. Don Pritz used to say, to not let somebody do something for you is denying them the pleasure and the ability to be of service. And that is so true. I mean, I know when I'm of service in whatever way, there's a feeling of, oh my God, purpose, as we were talking, you know. I have purpose, you know, there's purpose. And people like to be generous. People like to be kind. People like to give, you know. And I had to learn to accept that. I'm the kind of person who I can give very easily, but to receive, that's a whole different thing for me. And I had to really learn how to do that. I remember when I turned 50 and all my sponsees wanted to do this party for my 50th birthday. And I was like, oh my God, I don't like the attention. I don't want to do it. And I realized that I needed to just let them do it,
Yeah.
And I did, it was, I wasn't comfortable with it. I let them do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing that you touched on that made me think of this. As I was going through my amends process, this is a few years ago. Some of the amends I was making was I got to see. I had a family member a stepdaughter from a previous marriage that's not doing very well. Right? Her mother passed away when she was a kid, and she's not been doing very well at all. Well, she had come back into my life after I'd gotten sober, and I started forming a relationship with her, and she reminded me of me. Like when I was her age, I was just as bad off as her, right? And at the time, my stepson in my current marriage, he's been living with us, right? And he's like a completely different, way different than me. He's financially stable. He pays his own bills. He takes care of himself in a lot of different ways. It's one thing after another. But what I seen was how my family had to cut me off at like a pretty young age when it come to certain stuff, right? Because I was so strung out. I mean, I was strung out since I was young age, right? And it was crazy because I got to see how like the purpose that you're talking about, how with family, whether it was the parents or kids, I'd robbed my family from that, my parents, for years because I was just so unresponsible, or irresponsible that they were just like, they didn't know what to do with me. So that parenting experience for them, I'd robbed from them for years. And I didn't see that until I got older and started seeing like, wow, I'm like, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, very true. And self-supporting also, I believe I have to be spiritually self-supporting.
Yeah.
I can't depend on my family to make me okay emotionally. And that, I remember when, it was a long, long time ago, I was talking to my sponsor and it was about my grandkids. And she said this to me. She said, what a burden we place on our families when we make them responsible for our emotions. She says, we expect them to love us a certain way or to give us this love. And if we don't get that exact the way we want, we're hurt, we're fearful, or whatever the stuff that comes up. She says, that's a burden. And she said, because I was at the time, I believe I was like really just so involved with my grandkids and it's like, oh yeah, well, I got to do this, I got to do that. And she said, one of the things she says to me is that everything is an asset until it becomes a liability. And everything is an asset until it becomes a liability. And there was a part of me that was like doing and doing and doing for my kids and doing and doing and doing for my grandkids. And I loved them, of course, but it was also to cement their love, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants that.
Wow.
And that's really an unfair burden to place on a person, and to expect that to take the place of my spiritual life. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm responsible for my spiritual life, I wouldn't be able to have all of my relationships. Yeah. I couldn't. Yeah. They would be a mess. Yeah. So my being spiritually self-supporting really has an impact on all of my relationships. And I have to also accept where my kids lie within their spiritual journey. And they don't have to be where I am. They are entitled to take as long or go as quickly as they go through their journey. We're all moving to the same place, whether we think we are or not. Amen. And I have to be willing to let people have not only their emotional journey, their financial journey, also their spiritual journey. Or I'm stealing from them. I think I told you the story of how my friend Mark Houston years ago said at a conference when he was sharing, "You Al-Anon members are thieves. You steal my experience." You know,
Yeah.
and boy, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's good. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier with, that seventh step awareness, right? It's and also how vital it is to have a loving God that's available to you. Like if you don't have that available, then all you have is, this power you're seeking in whatever other area, right?
Yeah.
It's so vital. It's huge. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good stuff. You want to move on? You want to move on to 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go to 8.
Okay, let's do 8. 8, short form is Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers.
Ours and Al-Anon reads, Al-Anon 12-step work should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. Same thing, you know? And so this is, first of all, this is a reminder to me that all 12-step work is non-professional. I mean, that's the clear piece of Tradition 8. Okay? We don't pay for 12-step work. I mean, it's just not done, right? Yeah. I mean, when I meet with my sponsor, it's for fun and for free. When my sponsees meet with me, it's for fun and for free. Yeah. Well, my role as mother, as wife, as grandmother, as mother-in-law, whatever my role is in the family, it is not professional. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a bank. Yeah. I am not a taxi. That doesn't mean I can't do any one of those things as a lay person, but that's not my job and that's not my training, right? Yeah. And kind of tying into the tradition being self-supporting, I would be the banker because I couldn't stand how I felt if my kids were in trouble. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear that anxious feeling of worrying. I remember when the lottery first came out, I would go and I'd play the lottery and I'd be like, oh man, if I win, this is what I'm going to do with it. And I'm going to give my kids this much. And, we're going to do this. And won't my kids be thrilled? And my friend Mike L says, I didn't want a lot of money. I just wanted enough money to not have to depend on God.
Yeah, nice. I get that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I didn't want a lot of money, just enough money so I wouldn't have to worry about my kids and depend on God, Yeah. It's like, oh my God, yeah. Wow. So my job is just to be mom, just to be the wife, just to be grandma, just to be the mother-in-law, and shut my mouth sometimes when they don't ask for advice, Yeah. And if they ask for it, as my sponsor says, you share your experience, strength, and hope. Share your experience, strength, and hope. That's how you share with them, Yeah. Non-professional. Our service centers may employ special workers. Well, I'll tell you, oh my goodness. I remember, I'll tell this little story, and it kind of ties into 9 as well, but I'm gonna use it for 8. Years ago, it must have been, was it just before COVID? I think it was just before COVID. I can't remember exactly. And Tom and I had been talking about redoing our floors, and we weren't in agreement about what to do with our floors. We have these floors, they're called Saltillo tile. They're like a reddish tile that's 12 by 12. And some of them were cracked in our living room and in our kitchen. And he wanted to replace certain ones. And I'm like, I don't want to do that because I didn't want to spend the money. I've only wanted to do certain things. And he had this guy in the program who came to our house, and, that's pretty much, that's what he did. And he's talking to him. Then all of a sudden I was like, I stepped in and I got involved in the conversation. And now the problem is I had already told Tom that he was responsible for it. I wanted nothing to do with it. Okay.
Yeah.
And what ended, so I stepped in and I said something, and I was talking, and I was not happy. I was clearly not happy.
Yeah.
And when the guy left, Tom said, "You owe him an amends." I said, "What?" I said, "I don't owe him an amends." And Tom said, "Oh, you absolutely do owe him an amends." I said, "I don't owe him nothing." And Tom's like, "Well, I think you do." I said, "I don't think I do." And so this was on a Wednesday, right? That Friday, in Santa Fe, I had to speak at a conference, and I'm the Friday night speaker. And I'm going up, and I see this guy who's at our house, and I'm going, "Oh, son of a gun! I do owe him an amends, I do owe him." And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to tell my story if I didn't make the amends, because how can you go up and tell us your story and be honest and be authentic and say you trust and believe and depend on God when you've got something between you and another person?
Yeah.
Don Pritz years ago said to me, "If there's something between you and another person, there's something between you and God." And I knew clear well there was something between him and me. So I went up to him and I said, "Man, I can't remember what I said, but I made amends." And here's what he said to me. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
This is what he said. He said, "Don't worry about it. It's fine." He said, "You reminded me of why I'm not married."
Oh, wow.
And all I could think was, well, glad to be of service, dude.
That's funny. Wow.
Oh, my God, right?
Wow, yeah.
I'm not a special worker in the department of, flooring and repair, but because I'm married to a guy who that's what he did was construction business, and he was, a contractor, I think I know all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's I'm not. But I'll tell myself that I know things that I have no knowledge of.
Amen.
I get in the middle of it all.
I get it.
And what ends up happening is they're mad at me. Yeah. We have these special workers, and we have them for a reason. And special workers are people who get paid. Tom doesn't like doing yard work. He'll do it. I mean, we've done yard work. He doesn't like doing it. He'd rather have somebody pay.
Yeah.
So I refuse to pay. So I'll do as much of it as I can, and then when I can't, I'll have somebody come and help and do some stuff. Because sometimes we need special workers. Tom and I have had to go to a marriage and family counselor. We've had to go to therapy. We've had to do a whole bunch of stuff like that because we needed somebody coming in to help us navigate our relationship so that we could move through what we were dealing with.
Yeah.
Because on our own, it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. We need professional people, even in our relationships, and we pay them what they need to help us navigate all this stuff.
Wow.
I remember the first time I got a housekeeper. We were not, Tom still had not yet built our home. We were still in this little 2-bedroom, 2-bath mobile home. And I couldn't keep up with the housework. I couldn't keep up with the kids. I was working, and it was a really busy job I had. And I thought, you need a housekeeper. But I was so embarrassed, Paul, thinking of getting a housekeeper when I had a mobile home. I had this trailer. Tom says, "Don't glorify it, Juan. It wasn't a mobile home. It was a trailer, And but I had to have it, And so I got somebody because I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So I have to know what my skills are, what my talents are, and where I lack the ability to do certain things so that I can employ these people. And I think I think that's one of the big things with between tradition 8 and tradition 9 is that tradition 8 talks about those paid people. Tradition 9 doesn't talk about paying these people. It
Service.
says, yeah, it's about service, right? And so that's one of the differences between 8 and 9. Let's see. And I believe that there's a big freedom in admitting that I can't do it all myself.
Yeah.
You know, for someone like me, that's a big freedom and that's a big surrender. My sponsor recently said to me, she says, you say all the words, she says, but you don't use the word surrender. She says, I want you to start using the word surrender. She says, because that's really what you're doing when you finally give up. You know, you just surrender, you know, and there's a real freedom with that.
Amen.
Real freedom with that.
I love freedom.
Yeah. You know, with my mom, I think I mentioned before that I had to put her in an assisted living home because she had dementia and I couldn't keep her by herself at the house any longer. And, you know, we had to get somebody to give that care to her because my job was to be a daughter. And I realized I was getting very, very angry and very, very resentful at my mom because she was not the mom that I always knew. You know, she was very independent and very brilliant woman. And she was not the mom I remembered. And I was resentful having to do with all the care that I was doing. And I wasn't doing a very good job of it. How can you? When you're not just a daughter, you're a wife, you're a grandmother, you're a great a grandmother. I mean, there's and sponsees, and you know, I mean, there's just too much.
Yeah.
And so to put her into a home where they could care for her and give her good care, my job was to find the right place and the right people to give my mom the kind of care I wanted for her, where they were caring, they were loving, they were supportive, you know, where the place was clean and they were attentive. And I did that, you know, I did that. And that's a huge thing, you know, and to be able to be in the reality of it, you know, not lie to myself, but to be honest about it.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I could just be a mom, you know, which is clearly not a paid professional position. You know, I could just be a daughter to my mom, Wow. And boy, I'll tell you, one of the sweetest moments I ever had was I'd say about 2 months before she passed away. It was a May afternoon, and I took Mom outside of the home onto their front porch there, and there was a little table, and there was a couple of chairs, and Mom sat on one chair, and I sat on the other. And we each had like one elbow on the table and leaning our face against our hands and on the table. And next thing I know, Mom's fallen asleep and I've fallen asleep. And it wasn't for very long, but just all of a sudden I woke up and I looked over at my mom and she was waking up and she looked at me and we just had a moment. You know, we just had a moment. It was the sweetest, tenderest moment. And I will be forever grateful for that because we had in that moment a beautiful mom-daughter connection that I had not had with her in years.
Well, it's crazy how like those little moments like that, it's like consciousness kind of giving you a little, it's everything. This is right where it's at, right?
Oh, man. We were just in the present moment, Paul. Yeah. We were just in the present moment. Yeah. You know, it was just, everything was perfect. Everything was perfect. Where my mom was perfect, where I was perfect, and I knew it was all okay.
Wow. Powerful. Man.
Yeah.
I love little stories like that. I can definitely relate to me and my wife. It's funny. We do projects, but we don't necessarily get along the best when we do projects. Right? We're both dominant, right?
Yeah.
it'll be a situation where, like, I refinished kitchen cabinets for years, right? And yet she wants to tell me how we need to be refinishing the cabinets, right?
I understand your wife perfectly.
I get it too, yeah. But on the flip side of that, there's also times I'll never forget. I had a buddy one time, and this is me all day. He was like, I'm one of those guys where, I can read an article about space and believe I'm an astronaut, Yeah. So I get the opposite of that too. I can't tell you how many times I know what I'm talking about, and then I've like finally some reality will kind of, the little grace will seek into the situation. I'm like, yeah, I have no clue what I'm talking about. I have no freaking clue. Yeah.
Really is about mutual respect. When I retired from the state, I had been an accountant for in one form or another for over about 23 years, I guess. And then that's not what I retired as. I retired as as a director for one of our regular licensing boards. And so I retired, and Tom said, now you can help me with the business and you can do my accounting. I'm like, I do not want to do your accounting. And boy, the difficulties that ensued because he didn't do it my way, and we both wanted to be the boss in the office, and that was a learning curve, let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, I bet. My wife's got this real, like, her work ethic is freaking out of this world. Like, she's one of those people where, like, when she goes to a job, generally within a year or so, they're going to want her to run the place. And that's true. I mean, that's just their work ethic is like that. And, so it's funny. She's a freaking awesome woman. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Nice. We want to move on?
Yes.
Let's go to 9. Okay, here's the short form of Tradition 9. AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve.
Okay, we aren't very different. What we say is our groups as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. So I really believe that this tradition has a lot to do about controlling.
Amen.
And controlling in order to be safe. Okay. I want to just read a little something here from a book that I love, and this book that it's called Recovery: The Sacred Art, and it's by Rami Shapiro.
Okay.
And I especially like his stuff on step 1, 2, and 3. Okay. This is how he starts the book. And I'm going to read a couple of little snippets from here. Okay. So, this is what he says. If you're addicted to anything, and all of us are addicted to the delusion that we are in control of our lives. That's how he starts. That's how it starts off in the foreword. Okay. And then, one of the other things that I love, he says this: here is the heart of 12-step recovery. Quit playing God. Quit playing God.
Yeah.
Next paragraph says, what does it mean to play God? It means living under the delusion that life is controllable. It means constantly struggling to maintain the illusion that you are controlling it. It means, this is the part. It means lying to yourself all day, every day, insisting that with enough effort, you can get life to do whatever it is you want it to do. It means having to mask your failure at controlling life by blaming others, parents, spouse, partner, children, colleagues, friends, for your failure. It means spiraling. I'm going to read this part because it's important. It means having to dull the pain of failure with booze, pills, television, overwork, or whatever your method of numbing yourself to the reality of life's uncontrollability may be. It means spiraling into the madness of delusional thoughts and addictive behaviors that make sense only to a mind drunk on the insanity of its own divinity.
Wow.
That is unreal. I mean, really, right? I mean, and this is why, for me, the 12 steps are designed for living, because there will always be those areas that come up. And I have watched people in AA or Al-Anon, you deal with the booze, you deal with the drugs, and the next thing you know, they're overeating, they're exercising to the point that they don't even see their families. They're overworking. There's something that they're overdoing because I spiral into the madness of the delusion that I can control my life, and rather than to face the reality that I will never have any control, I will do these things to the point where it's crazy. It is insanity. It's insanity. And I love the Big Book's definition of insanity. What it says is the inability to think straight.
Yeah.
And lack of proportion in my thinking. I love that definition of insanity.
Yeah. Because
when I overdo these things, whatever it is, even if it's the obsession, the overthinking, the overanalyzing, it is, I lack proportion in my thinking. And I'm certainly not thinking straight. A lot of times that lack of proportion is a fact that I'm no longer, whatever age I am. I revert to being, a child of 5, a child of 8, a child of 12, whatever it might be with whatever situation, so I'm no longer capable of handling the current situation that I'm in.
Interesting. Yeah.
So this tradition 9 really is about control, my lack of it and how I will, and my wanting to be responsible or not wanting to be responsible. Let's put it that way. I want the outcome I desire without the responsibility of the consequences if it all turns out badly. The first time I did, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. When I first did my very first third step, oh my God, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I'd go to my sponsor's house over and over and over again. And she'd say, finally, the last time that I was there, she said, I don't know what's going on with you. She said, normally if you couldn't make the decision, I think there was something wrong with your second step. She said, but I know the second step that you did. She says, I know it, and I know it was solid. And she says, or I would wonder about the first step. She says, I know you get it. And she says, what's going on? And I said, I'm afraid to make a decision. And what I realized was I had never made a decision in my whole entire life. I would make decisions by default. I'd rather somebody else makes the decision and me not have to do it because I don't want the responsibility if it goes wrong.
Amen. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Then I can blame them. That's their fault. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I didn't decide to do this, whatever this was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I tell you what. Well, go ahead. My bad.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, please.
So one thing that made me think, one of my favorite conceptions when we're doing the second step now, my grand sponsor, he says that one of his favorite conceptions of the power is creative, right? And it comes up with clever little ways of getting me out of the holes I dig. Right. Right. And when I start experiencing that, and I'll tell you what helped me with that is my first sponsor. Like the relationship I had with the guy was I'd call him and share everything with him, right? And he'd always throw in like the hand of a loving God, the hand of a loving God, the hand of a loving God, where I started saying like, holy crap, I'm learning through this stuff, right? And that helped me with that, being able to, that was something I was willing to turn my will and my life over to something that was bigger than me, that was possibly helping me through situations. That make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you for that. So, it's also about being accountable. I don't have any control. I do have a responsibility to know who I am in relationship with. Now, we often I hear quite often, let me put it that way. Quite often I hear people say, we don't take anybody's inventory but our own.
Yeah.
My sponsor says, you better take their inventory if you're going to be in relationship with them, because you better know who they are, you know,
it's an
and
investment.
be in reality.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Rather than, you know, I often say to my girls, don't fall in love with their potential, you know, because we don't fall in love with the real person. We fall in love with our idea of them.
Yeah. Yeah, you shared about that in the past. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I better know who I'm in a relationship with. Yeah. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Not to blame or to criticize, simply to know and to be in reality, you know, and so that I can trust, because this also is about trust. You know, can I trust the people that I'm in relationship with? Do I trust my husband? Do I trust my kids, my grandkids? Do I trust these people in my circle, you know? And if I don't, why not? What's going on? What's going on with me? You know, am I expecting something of them? Or, you know, it's just, I can't get out of doing step work as I look at any of these traditions. I mean, every time we've talked about these traditions, it always comes back to the step work and where I am.
It deepens
right?
It. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. If somebody's not trustworthy, is it because I'm expecting something of them that they can't deliver? You know, one of the things that my sponsor has me pay attention to when I do inventory and I look at where I'm at fault, she says, do you have unrealistic expectations? You know, and that's been a big one in past inventories, where I have unrealistic expectations of people, knowing full well who they are. I still have these unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not fair to them or anybody, you know? It's not being fair or responsible to them, you know? And how can I expect them to be a part of the family or to do certain things within the family if I'm not being realistic about what they're capable and not capable of doing? You know, my kids have all offered to be of help to Tom and to myself, you know, with his since he was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And the thing is, they're all busy. They've all got their own families. They're all working. They've got their own lives. And so while I appreciate their help and I let them know how much I appreciate it, there's little things that they can do. But for the big things, it's just not realistic. As much as they would like to do it, to be of help that we might need, you know. So we've had to find other ways, and sometimes the way they can be of most help is to respect the fact that they can't help. You know, I'll tell you that my kids, they want to make us okay emotionally. You know, one of my kids was just so sad. She goes, "Mom, I wish that you could come to me and tell me all this stuff." And I do in a certain way, but they're not the ones that I go to first, because that's not a fair burden to them. You know, I have my sponsor. I have people in the program who have been through some similar stuff that we've been through. And so I go to them, and then I can tell my kids a little bit of what I went through and how I went through it. You know, so because they are family, but they are not responsible to me. And it's not their job to serve me. It's not their job to serve me. And it's not my job to serve them. You know, we have to be able to be mutually independent, dependent. And I don't know if that makes any sense. We have to be able to, it's like if you clasp your hands, there's not much movement. If you put your hands into fists and put them together, we're together, but there's movement, and you can, and they can still go up and down and sideways and around and all of that, you know, and that's how we have to be able to move through our relationships. You know, we aren't organized as a family. We're probably one of the most disorganized families, but I'll tell you, we love each other. We
Nice.
talk or we text or do whatever, you know.
Hmm.
And
Nice.
I know people who do. Oh, we do a group Zoom meeting, and it's like, yeah, we've tried doing that, and nobody has anything to say.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like dead.
Hmm.
You know, that's not happening.
Hmm.
So you know, we talk independently, or I think I told you that one time, and stop me if I did tell this, but one time several years ago, what I got was text the kids. We have 4 kids, and text the kids and text Tom and ask them each for a number, because you're going to buy a lottery ticket and you're going to pick the winning lottery ticket. And I thought that's the most stupid thing I've ever thought of. The kids are going to laugh, they're going to roll their eyes, and nobody's going to do it.
Yeah.
And I kept getting it over and over and over again. So finally, I was like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
It's stupid. They're going to laugh at me, but I'm going to do it. So I did it. And within 2 minutes, they all texted me back, you know, with a number. And, you know, and we started to keep in contact,
Nice.
you know, and not organized, but every time that I would do this, we'd stay on the text thread longer and longer and longer, with everybody filling in each other about what was going on in their lives. So while we never won the lottery, I think we won the lottery,
There
you know?
go. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
To touch.
Go ahead.
Yeah, to touch on something you was talking about, like, you know, taking the other person's inventory. I mean, that is huge. I mean, if you look at, especially when you have your own experience on, and luckily I had you know, my mentor's sponsorship when I first got here. Like when me and my wife first met, we were both just like really, really young in recovery, like, you know, 6 months sober, right? And we were meeting buddies like for the first 2 years. You know, they were like, hey, look, just get to know each other. My first sponsor used to say, you know, it takes anywhere from 6 months to a year just to get to know somebody, right? And so that's what we did. And I'm so grateful, because I started seeing how, like, just take my own experience. Like, when things hit the fan, because stuff's going to happen, right? Like, am I learning how to, like, rely on a loving God? You know, what is my actions, you know, doing? You know, because what you see so much is like what you were talking earlier, learning how to take care of my own emotional quality. Like, if I don't get to that place where I'm learning how to take care of my own emotional quality, then it's exhausting for me and the other person, right? And, you know, if you look at a relationship, it's just it's the most important investment you'll ever make, right? And,
yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, man, like, you get to see how important. It goes back to what we were talking about in the previous with the loving God. You know, do you have a loving God available to you? You know, what's your relationship like that? Like, you know, what is it? If you look at what Bill says in enlarging your spiritual life, you know, through self-sacrifice, right, you'll never in working with others, you'll never withstand the certain trials and low spots ahead, right? So how important is that purpose? Like, what is this other person that you're making an investment in? What happens? Yeah. What are their reactions or responses to life whenever things happen? What, you know, that's important, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So important.
Absolutely. Most definitely. Most definitely. You know, we're responsible. I'm responsible to the relationship. You know, I'm responsible to my relationship with Tom. I'm responsible to the relationship with my daughter and my kids, you know, my grandkids. And I know full well. Do you remember that song? I can't remember I forgot who did it, but it's the one about how I'm not going to remember the song, but it's the one where, you know, the guy's a kid and his father's busy. He's too busy to play ball with him. And, you know, there's always something that dad's too busy. And then when he's grown up, you know, and he has his own kid and the father says, you know, I want to come over and I want to spend time with him. And the guy says, yeah, but, you know, it's like, I'm busy now, you know, and I can't remember what the name of the song is, you know. I know full well that my kids are busy, you know, they're busy, and my grandkids are busy. They're in their lives, they're starting it. And the question for me has always been, who am I and how do I want to show up in the relationship? And so I'm the one who makes the effort. I make the effort. You know, I go out of my way to do whatever it is to see them and to spend time. One of my grandkids has some, I'll say, some challenges, and she is 29, and she will always live with mom and dad. And I make it a point to go visit her once a week and take her out to lunch. And because I want to give my daughter some time to herself.
Wow.
And not feel like she's always having to be on and responsible for her, and just cut her a little slack, And I want to get my granddaughter out of the house and give her something to do, and go wherever she wants to go and just spoil the living daylights out of her, So
Yeah, that's awesome.
And yeah, so I want to do something for them, so that she feels cared for and she feels safe, and she trusts that grandma cares about her because grandma spends time with her, It's that old thing that we've often heard of, if I love you, it's not about the words, it's about how am I showing it? How am I showing up for you? Because that's what love really is about. It's
Absolutely.
It's the experience of it and what I'm willing to do to show you that I care. And there's a balance in that I cannot love you at my expense. I love you within the abilities I have to give. And I think that's really important. I have to have a trust in this loving God that I have, that I depend on, to know what I can do and what I can't. How responsible can I be to somebody? How responsible can I expect them to be to me? I have to be careful. I'm not a know-it-all. Tom is not a caregiver. Okay, he wants to be. He is not.
Yeah.
That is not his forte.
Same here.
And I have to accept that. And I have to realize that there's other people I need to go to, and that I do, and they are the ones who are helpful when I need help. In the past, when I've had, whatever going on, I've had sponsees who come over and who are helpful. My sponsor, she was in town, was helpful. I know who he is, and that's not to be critical of him. Yeah. It's to say that that's not his gift.
Yeah.
He has a lot of beautiful gifts. That's not one. He'll say to me, "I'll be right back. What do you want? Do you want something from town?" And I'll tell him what I want. And then he gets caught up and he gets on a conversation or he sees somebody, and I'll see him at the end of the day, and he'll come with whatever it is that I asked him to bring. But, I know who he is, right?
Yeah.
I know who he is.
Yeah.
And I love him for who my great grand sponsor, and I think I said this previously, Hugh Douglas used to say, "I love you because of your defects, not in spite of them."
Amen. Yeah.
He's got some beautiful traits that I love. That is not one. And I have to just recognize that and not expect him to do when I know full well he can't. I had, years ago, I had a gal that I'd been about 2 years doing the executive director for one of the licensing boards. And they finally approved me to get like 3-4 more people to work under me. And so I hired one woman because she'd been involved with another board for many, many years. And I thought she's somebody who could help. And so she started work on a Monday. And I know this is bringing up in work, but it's a relationship, right?
Yeah.
And so I hired her on a Monday. She came into my office on Thursday afternoon after lunch. And she handed me a letter. And I looked at the letter and I thought, oh, this does not sound quite right. It didn't read the way I would have written it. Okay. I didn't think it was quite clear enough. And I just didn't. And I said, let's make a few changes in this. And she said, I already sent it out. And I was like, oh my God. And all these thoughts flashed through my head. It's what flashed through my head was, why in the world would you send it out without showing it to me? Oh, we're going to look stupid. I'm going to look stupid. It's like the board's going to look stupid. They're going to be unhappy. And then all of a sudden, the last thing that came to me was, you hired her because you cannot do all things. You can't do all things. You need somebody who can do this. And you hired her. She might not be doing it the way you want her to do it, but she's doing it.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my God, and I realized I can't micromanage all these people. What I said to her was this. I handed her back the letter and I said, okay, thank you for doing that. I said, I really appreciate that. Tell you what, next time, let me read it before you send it out. And she said, okay. And she did, and so, it's like, how can I be respectful to somebody and not control them and not micromanage, and, it was a real learning experience for me. And if I hadn't had the program behind me, I don't think that would have turned out as well as it did. As it was great. It really was a wonderful experience for both of us, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think of going back to the Al-Anon's Tradition 5, where it talks about we're there to encourage, right? Like, it's so fun. It's so easy to lose touch with, like, the principles that we're trying to aim towards, right? And when self gets, just overwhelmed, then it's so easy to lose touch with that. Like, it's God's universe. We're just here to help, and I want to make everything mine, especially in a work position, because there's you're actually, you actually get roles sometimes where you're in charge, right? And so it's real easy.
Yep, absolutely. It's there's nothing wrong with making a plan. We don't plan the results. We make the plan, but we can't plan the results. We don't know what's gonna happen. And if I had done anything different, if I had berated her or said anything and put her down in any way whatsoever, what a horrible thing that would have been to her. She would not have felt like she was useful. She would have not felt like she had purpose. And that's just not the way I want any of my relationships to be. I want people to know how important they are to me. And I really think that built some trust, and it showed her still that she has to be accountable to me, right? Yeah. Ultimately, she has to be accountable to me, and I ultimately had to be accountable to my boards. I had several boards, and to the people of the state of New Mexico, because it was my job. That's who I worked for, was the people of the state of New Mexico. And so I had to be able to do what I needed to do to follow the laws, to ensure that I was doing my job, because in that respect, it was my job to serve them.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. Man, I love it. It's funny because when we first started, before we got on here, I was like, I don't know what we're going to talk about with something. You just laid this stuff out awesome. Yeah, it's good stuff. I'm sitting there like, how do you apply the 9 or 8? And now you've done a wonderful job with this. Wow. You want to move to 10?
Yeah, let's go for 10, huh?
Yeah, let's do 10. I love 10.
Okay.
Okay, the short form of Alcoholics Anonymous, Tradition 10 is Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy.
Yep, ours says Al-Anon family groups have no opinion on outside issues, hence our name ought never be drawn into public controversy. So, all the traditions are about unity. Or in other words, if we adhere to these traditions, they provide unity. They keep relationships and families together. They help ensure that there's no guarantee. I mean, that's the bottom line with all of this stuff, is there's no guarantee for anything, and we would never, because people change, situations change. And so to the best of our ability, if we bring our best selves, there's more chance for a successful continuation of whatever relationships there are, or to end them without, needless torture, I guess,
Yeah.
Tradition 10 for me is, what do I want to say? It asks me, what am I up to? What am I up to? One of the things that comes to mind is gossip. Nothing has the ability to destroy relationships more and faster than gossip. And gossip, if it's not true, gossip if it's true, and I've heard people say, yeah, well, it's true. It might be true, but it need to be said,
Yeah.
And that to me is one of the biggest things with this tradition. So how do I know if something is an outside issue? Well, the first thing I have to ask myself, first of all, is it any of my business? Is whatever is coming up any of my business? And I'll tell you, lots of times, it's not. It's not any of my business. Would the person who told me be okay if I shared this information? It's one thing to announce a birth in the family or with friends when everybody is excited about the birth, and the child's expected, and it's expected with love and anticipation. That's one thing. When the birth announcement is to feed gossip or to criticize, somebody else in the family or another person, when I was, I had my first daughter when I was 17. I was pregnant in high school, and you didn't have kids out of wedlock. And I was a kid having a kid. I was pregnant, right? And boy, I'll tell you, the gossip was up. I ended up married. I got married and then had my daughter. I was not, I don't know that I wasn't the first one in the family to get pregnant and then get married, but there was always the family gossip. I remember that, and eventually everybody loved the person when they came in. But at first everybody's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Can't tell. It's like, and it's just, what's the point of all of that? But we do that. And I think it's human nature, but really, is it necessary?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'll tell you, like when I first got sober, and I can still be guilty of this if I'm not, paying attention. But like it was weird. It's like I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like there's again, it goes back to like seeking some kind of power, right? Self-seeking some kind of power through it.
Yeah.
Oh, I know this, or I know a piece of information, so I'm going to share it with people. Whatever it is, and it's just not very effective. First off, it can be depending on the situation, it can be cause harm.
Absolutely.
Whatever it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know it. Absolutely. And it really is just like you said, Paul, there's power and there's ego involved in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like if I know this information and I share it, I know something that you didn't know.
Yeah.
And check me out, And boy, that's not who I want to be.
Yeah.
And so that's why that question, what am I up to? Why do I need to say this? Do I need to say this? What's going on with me that I feel like this is something that I have to share? And with families, it's I really try with my kids not to say anything, or my grandkids, not to say anything that is critical of one of the other, because I can just imagine they're wondering, well, if she'll say that about them, what will she say about me? And I think that's what we all wonder when we hear somebody gossip. It's like, oh, they're saying that about them. What will they say about me?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And boy, nothing like gossip and talking about somebody is, can ruin relationships like crazy.
Amen.
And it reminds me, we're all entitled to our opinions, not just me. I have my opinions. Everybody has their opinions. I don't have to give my opinions, even if I'm asked for them,
Yeah.
I don't have to give it. I can just say, I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I really am. I'm not sure for today. I have an opinion today,
Yeah.
but here's the thing with opinions, right? This is my experience in this, is that this is my opinion today with the information I have. Tomorrow, with more information, my opinion will change.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going, and it's supposed to. Really, I mean,
Absolutely.
and it's funny.
Yeah.
But like, I've learned just that playing dumb. Always. Oh wow, no, I didn't know. Huh. Keeps me out of so much trouble. Oh wow, no, I don't
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah. Oh,
Especially,
yeah.
I'll have a sponsee, whatever, going through something, and someone else will come up to me and be like, "What's up with so and so?" He's all right. Seems like yeah. What do you mean? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, seems he's doing
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah. 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 Or sponsee relationships. I
Yeah.
mean, if you live in this small town, I don't sponsor as many here in town as I used to. But I when I did sponsor, like I think I probably had like about 6 sponsees here in Santa Fe,
Mm.
and everybody knew each other,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they'd step on each other's toes, and I'd hear about it. And when we'd have when they would come to me in sponsorship, and we'd have our time and we'd be talking, it was as if I was hearing it for the first time,
Yeah. Yeah.
because this is about you, it's not about them.
Yeah. And I'm guilty of the opposite too, though. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. I've learned the hard way.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Don't we learn that exactly that way, the hard way?
That's it. Yeah.
That's why it becomes experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And one of the things about this tradition 10 also is that there's oftentimes I didn't used to want to have an opinion on anything, because I was afraid I'd have the wrong opinion. That you wouldn't like me if I shared my opinion.
Yeah.
I was
Mm-hmm.
fearful of conflict. I was fearful of controversy. So I would keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Today, I think, and in the program, we talk a lot about the fact that we keep our mouth shut about politics and religion. With people, and I think in our families too. Oftentimes, I have seen more families break up regarding politics than religion.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so sad. One of my neighbors was talking about, he had family for Christmas, and he said it was so hard. They all had different opinions, and they didn't hesitate to talk about it, and it just made it a hard time to be together. And I don't know that it has to be a hard and fast rule. I think it's about tolerance. Can we talk to each other about certain things without it having been a controversy? Can we talk? Can we be honest? Can we be vulnerable? Is it safe? And so it's not just about, we don't get drawn into controversy. It's if it's becoming controversial, within our family, does it need to be? Do we all have to be right and somebody wrong? I can be so right. I mean, I really can be so right, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I can be so right, I'm wrong.
Yeah, and it's also important for me. It seems that it's important to realize, like, what is the purpose of us doing? What's our purpose here, right? Because it's so easy to get so sidetracked on, like, this need to share my opinion or whatever it is, and like I really like thinking about our common welfare should come first, right? If we're aiming at unity. Like, this is what we're here for, right? And it's so easy. It's cool because a lot of this stuff is one of those things where, how do you know what you don't know, right? So just talking about it and having context and having, no one knows any of this stuff. I mean, I've never met anybody that just come in and was like, oh yeah, that's obvious. I wasn't raised with those principles, right?
No.
So it's important for me to talk about stuff and get the content out, or just get, shine some light on it, right? And it's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it reminds me to be honest, to be considerate, it's am I depending upon this loving God? Is that my source, or is the other person, or am I my own source? Do I make myself the power?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of my prayer, which, God, you be the interpreter.
Yeah, I love that.
And give me the ability to talk and to be caring, to be loving and respectful, and above all, to be honest, and not insist on my own way. And have I mentioned something so often that it's not simply me stating my views, my ideas, but what I'm doing by stating it so often is I'm trying to change other people's minds.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
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 We come in, and I like what Richard Rohr talks about. You create this somebody, for lack of a better term, for the first half of life. And it's like you're trying to protect this. This somebody you've built for however long. And then you fall out of that really on the second half, right? It's where you start seeing how it's more about relationship and.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Tom made this movie back in like 2011, and he was headed out to Louisiana to do some more filming. Our son was his cinematographer, and he said he was going to be gone for about 5 days or so. I can't remember exactly. And while he was gone, I found myself very, very resentful towards him. And I did some step work. And what I realized with doing the step work was that I hadn't been honest with him. I didn't like the fact that he was financing this movie that he was making with our money. He spent enough money, and he was continuing to spend our money, and I wasn't happy about it. And I hadn't said anything to him because I knew it would cause a ruckus. Or let me put it this way. I was fearful that it would cause a ruckus and really cause some problems in our relationship. So I kept my mouth shut. And so when he came back, we were both in his office. And I said to him, I said, Tom, I owe you an amends. And he said, really? I said, yeah. I said, I owe you an amends because I have not been honest with you about this movie stuff. And I said, and so I went into that, and so it was easier than I thought it was going to be. And he took it very well, and he was still doing some construction in those days. And so he did some more construction jobs, and he financed the movie that way and had some other ways in which he came up with the money to finance the movie, the expenses. But for me, it was a huge growth experience because step work was involved, and I had to share my opinion. And because if I hadn't, it would have done more than cause controversy. My resentment would have built and built and built, and it would have not been pretty in our home because my resentments would have come out sideways.
Yeah.
And it might not have been public controversy, but it would have been horrible here at home.
And we're so lucky, ain't we? I mean, we're just so blessed to have this stuff available to us, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
and it's so, the longer we stick around and do this work, the more and more it becomes so obvious on how a spiritual basis of life is so vital to everything.
Absolutely. It is for me, Paul. Yeah. Absolutely. Without it, I don't do well. I wouldn't do well.
Yeah.
And with it, we still struggle. I still struggle. Sure. I still, make my mistakes and do my, fall short all the time, so I can you imagine without it?
Yeah, no. That's what I'm saying. What I was saying earlier when we were talking about those relationship investments, like, what are you investing into? This relationship that you're investing into with the other person, if they're not aiming towards a spiritual basis, you're going to have a whole lot of issues. And here's the thing is like, I see guys all the time, that will ignore that part of everything. We'll share some of this stuff with each other, and they'll ignore that part, and then here it is, a year or 2 years down the road, and things are freaking crazy, and like they've invested a whole lot into it, right? And I know that can happen anyways. Don't get me wrong, like you said earlier, people can change and situations.
Absolutely.
We can do this stuff and start living this way of life, and then all of a sudden fall off, because we're not maintaining it or whatever, but if you really look at it, like you said, thank God we have this, and imagine what it would be like if we didn't. I mean, it'd just be freaking exhausting. If you really go to like my current sponsor, when he talks about the definition he uses for agnostics, he says someone without a working, effective, experiential relationship with God, right? And I mean, imagine like when you see that, I remember coming in and I just had all these ideas that God just didn't care. Like he don't care about, he ain't trying to mess with me. Right? I didn't realize there was a power available now in this moment, but how exhausting is it to live that kind of life where you don't realize that there's a power that's available to us and you don't have any experience with this power? It's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Well, I think that's why I was in so much fear, before coming into the program and in my, those first several years, because I was busy running life on my own steam, and you better believe that's frightening.
Exhausting, Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when you're doing that, when you're in that space, what else do you have other than thinking that your happiness and your contentment lies in all these little conditions that are constantly moving all over the place?
Absolutely. Yep. And it can't be me that's wrong. It has to be you.
Yeah. Wow, man. I love this. Thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Yeah. I'm learning so much through it. It just brings it to the awareness, and just all week, little tidbits will come out all week where I'll remember, there we go, I'll remember what we talked about, yeah. Well, thank you. We'll make another date and finish it off. We don't have another date yet for the last one, and
okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I would like to talk to you about like some stuff about maybe the beginning of next year. I would like to do some step stuff with you and another person. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We can talk about that.
We'll talk about it here over the next couple months or whatever. So I'm super excited about the next episode too. I love 12. 12 is like every bit of this tied in. They're all like, I love how you used the term dovetail earlier. Dovetail together. Yeah. It's so true. Yeah. They're all just intertwined, right?
Yeah, they really are. They really are. Yeah. You can't just use one, to support something, because you're gonna step on the toes or violate completely another one.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Juanita. And you got anything
My
else
pleasure,
you want to finish
Paul.
with?
No, thank you. I thank you. It's always fun to do this with you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, likewise. Have a wonderful night. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
See you.
Hello. Thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.